If you asked me where you should start with Irish literature, these are exactly the books I'd be telling you to look at. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through my list of quintessential Irish books you absolutely have to read, not a James Joyce or a Samuel Beckett insight. These books are all very contemporary. They are all very much written within the last 30 or so years, and these are the ones that I think you definitely need to get started with. As you may imagine from my own reading taste, quite a lot of these are going to be contemporary or romance books, but I have got a couple of curveballs in here. I've got some historical fiction in here, I've got some non-fiction, I've got some fantasy, I've got a little bit of horror. I've tried to make this as much of a broad list as possible so that everybody can dip in and find something that they love. Because I would really like to dispel the rumor that Irish literature is just very samey, it's just very kind of bleak and depressing. There are so many phenomenal storytellers and so many phenomenal stories to check out that saying that is just doing our island a bit of a disservice. Starting off strong with Watermelon, and in conjunction with that, the entire Walsh Sisters series by Marian Keyes. Marian is one of the best contemporary writers that we have at the moment. Watermelon came out in 1995, and it was the first book in the Walsh Sisters series. The Walsh Sisters are Claire, Rachel, Maggie, Anna, and Helen. Each of them have a book dedicated to themselves. You also see their entire extended families, you see their parents, and there are 2 books in the series that have just recently come out in the last few years. Again, Rachel follows Rachel a little bit later on than Rachel's Holiday, and My Favourite Mistake follows Anna about 20 to 30 years after the release of Anybody Out There. These books all have something going for them. There are discussions about drug abuse, about single parenting, about divorce, about bereavement, about mental health issues. There is genuinely something in every single one of these books for every single person. And it's not just the Walsh Sister series that Marian has written. She has also got a phenomenal bunch of standalone books. One of my favourite standalones is The Break, which is about Amy and Hugh, who've been married for about 20 years. And Hugh walks into the kitchen one day and tells her that he wants a break from their marriage. He wants to head off to South Asia for about 6 months or so and just rediscover himself. Amy is then left behind to pick up the pieces and to kind of take charge when things really start to spiral for the family. I absolutely adore Marian. I hang on every single word that she has written, and I cannot wait to see what she's got in the future. But if you're looking for a kind of a slice of life of what a real Irish, kind of dysfunctional but really caring for each other family is like, the Walsh Sister series is definitely one to go for. Another phenomenal Irish author to check out is Louise O'Neill, and she's particularly great if you enjoy young adult fiction, but you're also looking to branch out a little bit into adult fiction. Louise O'Neill's debut book was Only Ever Yours, and it was touted as The Handmaid's Tale for the newer generation. It's following a group of 16-year-olds who have just come to their last year of school, and now things are really going to start getting interesting for them, because there are 3 paths in life that a woman can go down. She can be a wife, she can be a teacher, or she can be a concubine. In this world, women are no longer born, but they are genetically created. And the men in this world who are born are looking for the ideal woman to be their companion in life. And anybody who is not chosen as the perfect woman is just swept to the side. Isabel and Frida have been best friends since they started at the school, and things are starting to get a little bit tense in their relationship because Frida has started to gain weight and Isabel can no longer put it off and not say something. Only Ever Yours is a really damning look at body issues, at how bitchy girls can be, particularly at that age, and it is completely chilling reading. But if you want to try one of Louise O'Neill's adult books, then I would definitely recommend Idle. This is about Samantha, who is hovering finally on the mark of 3 million Instagram followers, and she celebrated this by publishing an essay about a sexual encounter that she had with her best friend back when they were still in high school. When the story comes out, Lisa contacts Samantha's agent and says that she wants this story completely wiped from existence because what Samantha is telling wasn't actually how Lisa remembers it. Lisa doesn't remember it as consensual in any way, and she never wanted what happened between the two of them to happen. As Samantha's follower numbers and subscriber count starts to plummet, she really has to put her PR agency to work to try and clear up her image again. This is a damning look at social media, at cancel culture, and just how much of a pedestal we can put influencers on, and how different things really are behind closed doors. Louise O'Neill is an author who can write across age categories, but an author who can write across genres super well is Emma Donoghue. She is really well known for contemporary fiction and also for historical fiction. One of the best contemporary books that I've ever read, not just from her, but in general, is Room. This was made into a movie about 10 or 15 years ago, and it's about a young boy named Jack. Jack has been living in a tiny little room for his entire life with Ma, with Egg Snake, with all of his toys, but Ma tells him one day that she never grew up here and that there is an entire world outside of Room waiting for them, and she wants to go back out there at any means necessary. For historical fiction books, though, I would definitely recommend The Wonder. This is about a young girl called Anna who is about 11 years old, and over the last 3 months, she hasn't eaten anything. The entire town is a little bit concerned about this, but they have started to see this as a miracle from God. Libby is a nurse brought over from England to find out what it is that's happening and to actually put credit as to whether or not this is a miracle. But she is very skeptical about the religious influence in this, and she is determined to find answers. Another great historical fiction book to check out, and one that was also made into a movie, is Brooklyn by Colm Tóibín. This is following Eilish Lacey, who grew up in Wexford but is heading off to New York for a new life for herself. She is leaving behind her mother and her sister, with whom she's super close, but Eilish knows that there is just nothing happening for her back in Ireland. When she arrives in New York, Eilish really struggles to find her way in New York City, and a massive tragedy that has bestruck the family doesn't particularly help to assuage the homesickness. But once she starts to get to know a young boy that she has met at a local dance and really find her footing with her job, Eilish doesn't exactly see herself ever moving back to Ireland. But a holiday back home might be putting those plans a little bit at risk. For something a little bit more contemporary and a real look at what Irish life is like, I would recommend Oh My God, What a Complete Aisling by Sarah Breen and Emer McLysaght. This is based on a character that the two friends kind of put together while they were living in a house together in Dublin. This was about 10 or 15 years ago, but Aisling has absolutely exploded. She is your quintessential country girl who has moved up to Dublin and is absolutely astounded by everything. She brings her heels with her to work in a Brown Thomas bag because Brown Thomas is an absolute sign of luxury to her. She brings her lunch with her every single day and can't be seen dead at the corner shop buying a salad box or buying a cup of coffee. Aisling is really close with her parents. She goes home every single weekend, but family life is really starting to get a bit worrisome for Aisling, and she is thinking about moving back home. She's also thinking about the next step that she wants to take with her boyfriend John. They've known each other for about 7 years now, and Aisling is really starting to worry that the ring finger on her left hand is looking a bit empty. When Aisling and John come back from a holiday in Tenerife that Aisling was expected to come back with a diamond ring from, she puts her relationship on the back burner and really starts to come into her own. In the 5 books in this series, you really follow Aisling as she finds her footing in this world, finds a career that she really enjoys, goes to a different country for a couple of years, and just comes out of her shell completely. What I will say about this book, though, is that it is inherently Irish. There are quite a lot of Irish references in this book that a lot of people wouldn't understand had they not grown up in Ireland, were they not immersed in Irish culture. So that is something that you might want to consider. If you like your books with a touch of magical realism, then check out Spirit Level by Richie Craven. This is about Danny, who goes out for an evening with a couple of friends partying, and when he and his friend Nudge drive home together, they are in a car accident where Nudge loses his life but Danny survives. Whether it's survivor's guilt, whether it's because Nudge has a message that he needs to bring to the other world, Danny is able to see Nudge when he's a little bit tipsy, but nobody else in the world can see him. Danny and Nudge come together to try and figure out why it is that he is able to see Nudge but nobody else can, and the entire reason that Nudge is still around in the first place. There is so much heart and humour in this book, and it is an absolute must read for people who really enjoy humour but also want a little bit of heart and a little bit of storytelling in here. If music is your thing and you really enjoyed Daisy Jones and the Six, then I would recommend to you Whatever Happened to Birdie Troy by Rachel English. This is about the Diamonds, a group that was put together in the 1980s. They had one massively successful single. They went on Top of the Pops in the UK to perform that single, and then the day after, the band disbanded. Nobody knows what has happened to them, and especially nobody knows what has happened to Birdie Troy. She was the lead singer of the group and has completely disappeared from public life since then. 30 or so years later, Stacey is running a podcast called Whatever Happened To. This is where she's going to take a look at some Irish celebrities who've kind of faded from the limelight and figure out what it is that is going on in their lives these days. Because everybody is super nosy and everybody wants to know what happened to their favourite celebrity once the limelight wasn't shining on them anymore. Stacey's always been kind of intrigued by what it was that ever happened to Birdie Troy and why nobody has ever heard from her again, and she is determined to lift the lid on what Birdie's been doing for the last 30 years. I would also definitely recommend The Rachel Incident by Caroline Donoghue, and this is one to read really soon because it has actually gotten an adaptation announced, and I cannot wait to see what it's going to look like on the screen. This is about Rachel, who is living in Cork in about 2008-2009, right on the turn of the recession in Ireland. Rachel is working in a bookshop where she meets her best friend James, but she's also studying English in UCC. Here, she meets Fred Byrne, who is her English professor, and she has fallen head over heels in love with him. Decides that the bookshop would be the perfect place for him to have his book launch party, and while they're there, James and Fred meet and start a torrid affair with one another. Rachel is then caught up in everything that is going on between James and Fred. It's kind of put in as a scapegoat for what's happening with the two of them. And this is an entire discussion about Ireland's views on homosexuality, about affairs, about the power dynamic that comes with an age gap romance. And there are also some really interesting things that were happening around 2008-2009 that are mentioned in this book. This is a really great one to read if you want to see what the recession was like in Ireland, particularly as we were coming out from the Celtic Tiger, a hugely prosperous era in Irish history, and the massive downturn that had on the economy. If books set in the pandemic are something that you can handle right now, then I would recommend 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. This is about Ciara and Oliver, and it is set right at the beginning of the pandemic in Ireland. Ciara and Oliver meet each other in a queue in Tesco one day, and they really hit it off together. They go out on a couple of dates, but with the lockdown restrictions that have just been announced, their fledgling relationship might be in jeopardy. Oliver, however, has had an idea. He would like Ciara to move into his apartment with him, and they're going to give their relationship a really good try. 56 days after they have first met, the police are called to Oliver's apartment because a dead body which has been badly decomposing has been found. At the beginning of this book, you don't know who it is that is dead and who it is that has murdered them, but there is an entire journey that you go along to figure out why it was that chance meeting wasn't exactly as chance as you might think it was. Something a little bit more upbeat, but still a little bit stressful, is Holiday Romance by Catherine Watt. This is about Molly and Andrew, who have been friends for about 10 years and have both been living in Canada for 10 years. Every year on Christmas Eve, they travel back home to Ireland to be with their families, but this year, they're a little bit of trouble with their plans. There is a huge storm brewing over the Atlantic, so their Toronto to Dublin flight is in jeopardy, as in it's been cancelled. So they now have 30 hours to try and make it back to their hometowns and an entire ocean between them. What happens is a journey right through the American continent, all the way up to France and all the way back to Ireland, just in time for the Christmas festivities and for one of them to become a new aunt or uncle. One of the best contemporary authors we have, if not the best contemporary author we have, is Maeve Binchy. She has got a huge back catalogue for you to check out, and one of my favourites of hers is Circle of Friends. This is about Benny and Eve, who grew up in the sleepy Dublin suburb of Knockglen. They've been best friends since they were 10 years old, and they are now 18 years old and just about to head off to university for the first time. They are going to study in Dublin city centre, and here they meet a huge group of friends, but trouble is never particularly far away from Benny and Eve, and things might be looking a little bit more comforting back in their hometown. I absolutely love a huge cast of characters. I absolutely love a book that is people discovering their place in the world, and Benny and Eve's story has always stuck with me. If you want a story that is going to completely rip your heart out, then I would recommend One by Sarah Crossan. This is about twins Grace and Tippy. They have lived together for 16 years with two separate dreams, two separate hearts, but one body. They have been conjoined twins, joined at the waist, and now things are starting to happen that means that the unthinkable is about to happen. Grace and Tippy may have to live their lives completely independently of one another, and that isn't something that the two of them have ever thought was going to happen. A Keeper by Graham Norton is about Elizabeth, who has returned to Ireland from New York following the death of her mother. She's here to clean up the house, to get all the affairs in order so that she can head back to New York and back to her family and her son Zach. Elizabeth grew up never knowing who her father was, but she has found a bunch of letters in the attic, all written by her mother Patricia, and this may have the answer as to who Elizabeth's father is. But it may also have the answer as to how Elizabeth's parents met in the first place, and the reason that she's never found out who her father was. This book completely engrossed me. I finished it within one sitting, and that is something that hasn't happened to me in such a long time. I absolutely loved this story. If you're a linguist and you want to find out a little bit more about the Irish language, then I recommend Mother Folklore by Dara Jose. This is a deep dive into the origins of the Irish language, the contemporary uses of it. There is actually a list of boy and girl baby names with the pronunciation guide in there. Sadly, Aoife isn't on the list, but I think it is starting to become a little bit more popular worldwide these days. And there is so much information in there that even I, a native speaker, didn't know before going into this book. This is a really great one for anybody who is interested in languages to read, and it will give you an insight into one of the world's kind of quieter and less well-known languages. Another great non-fiction book is Did Ye Hear Mammy Died by Seamus O'Reilly. Seamus came to prominence when he informed the world about a day that, while high on ketamine, he served drinks to the President of Ireland on a day that he shouldn't have been working. What snowballed from here is the story of Seamus's life growing up in Derry as one of 11 children and having lost his mother to cancer when he was 5 years old. Seamus walks into the room and asks everyone, did you hear Mammy died? Hence the name of this book. And it goes into Seamus's childhood with and without his mother, the short memories that he has of her, and what life was like for his father being left behind to pick the pieces up. There's a huge community aspect of this story because you can really tell that all 11 of the children really get along with one another. They have a massive WhatsApp group where they keep in touch with one another despite living in different corners of the world. And that is something that I think is just so wonderful to see. That kind of family feeling that so many people yearn for. Filter This by Sophie White is about Ali, who is almost ready to achieve her main goals. 100,000 followers on Instagram and bag an award at the Glossy's Influencer Awards. A story that she has posted has a kind of a weird angle in it that makes it look like she's sporting a tiny little baby bump. She kind of rides this wave because she realizes that mummy influencer content is going to skyrocket her views and skyrocket her subscribers count. Sam, the guy that she had met on Tinder, is starting to believe this story just as much as the other followers are. On the other side of the spectrum is Ali's absolute idol, Shelley. And Shelley has got the Instagram perfect life down. She's got a devoted husband. Her daughter is absolutely gorgeous, but life behind closed doors isn't quite as rosy as what Shelley is making everybody think it is. A children's book that I would recommend is Under the Hawthorn Tree by Marita Colm McKenna. This is set in the time of the famine, around 1845, and it follows 3 young siblings, Eilidh, Michael and Peggy. They have left their family home because their parents have both disappeared, gone off in search of food for the family, but they know that their mother has 2 aunts living in Castletaggart. They really hope that the aunts are still alive, but they decide to risk it and head off on the days-long journey to Castletaggart. While they are there, they are stricken with hunger, with disease, with questions about whether or not all of this is worth it. And this is a really interesting look at what the famine was like for the lay people of Ireland. It's also a really good way to introduce children to the idea of what it was that was happening back in the 1840s. And it will kind of get them talking about what it was like for the children of their age. Another story of Ireland's history is The Girl Who Came Home by Hazel Gaynor. This is one for the Titanic girlies out there, as this follows a fictional account of the Adrigule 14. Adrigule is a small village in County Mayo from which 14 people all boarded the Titanic in search of a better life in America. 11 of those people perished in the sinking and 3 of them managed to make it to New York. This is a fictionalized retelling of that Adrigal 14, and it follows Maggie, who is boarding the Titanic for a better life in America. Maggie is not, however, going to find her perfect life in America because she is leaving Seamus behind. They have had a fledgling romance for a couple of months, and Maggie is absolutely distraught at the idea of leaving him. 70 years after the sinking, Maggie's granddaughter Grace is starting to look into the family history and figure out how it was that her grandmother came to America. Maggie starts to tell Grace the story of her time on the Titanic, of everything that she was leaving behind, and how all of this has impacted her life up to here. P.S. I Love You may be Cecelia Ahern's most famous book, but my recommendation is actually Where Rainbows End, or as it's known in some other countries, Love, Rosie. This is about Rosie and Alex, who meet each other on their first day at school, and the entire book is told in correspondence. It's told in emails, text messages, letters to one another, and I absolutely love watching Rosie and Alex's lives diverge, but their friendship remains stronger than ever. Despite them living in different countries, despite them having totally different situations going on in their lives, you can really tell that Alex and Rosie care about each other, and that romance has always been their end goal, but has always just been a little bit out of reach for them. Another Irish author who offers multitudes is Sarah Maria Griffin. My first recommendation from her is Not Lost. This is her account of moving to San Francisco in about 2014 or so, and it is the story of how she really struggled to make it work while she was over there, the things that she did that reminded her a little bit of home, and how she finally managed to assimilate into the community. I really love how frank and how honest she is about the struggles that she has as an immigrant, and about the things that really made her miss home and what it was that made her come back to Ireland in the first place. But for her fictional work, I would definitely recommend Other Words for Smoke. This story follows May and Rossa, two twins who have been spending the summer with their Aunt Rita and her ward Bevan. Rita's house has burned down, and Rita and Bevan were both killed in the incident. The only two people who know what happened and all of the things that had happened in the house, that wallpaper that was always a little bit creepy, the things that were happening inside the wall in the first place, and the black cat who always turned up when you never expected him, are May and Rossa, and they are not entirely sure if it's something that anyone is going to believe them about. For an epic fantasy, I would recommend Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. This is following Leah, who has just become queen but is having a really hard time mourning her uncle because of the bankrupt mess that he has left her behind. Leah has just taken on Zania as her spy master, and this is making things a little bit more complicated for both of them. It is complicating Leah's responsibilities as queen, but it's also throwing a spanner into the works for Zania's plans for revenge. Her father was murdered, and she has no idea who it was that murdered him, but she wants answers. And Leah and Zania's growing feelings for one another are really starting to put things to heed. Another fantasy novel, but maybe one that's a little bit more urban fantasy, is All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. This is following Maeve, who is given detention one day, and while carrying out this detention finds a deck of tarot cards. She starts to learn how to read the cards, and she and her friend Fiona start giving out appointments to everyone in the school who would like to have their fortunes read. Lily, Maeve's ex-best friend, who she hasn't spoken to in a couple of years, decides that she would like to have her cards read as well. What turns up is the housekeeper. This is a card that Maeve has never seen before, and she's not entirely sure how to interpret this reading. Tensions start to flare between Maeve and Lily, and Maeve said some things to Lily that she really regrets, including that she wishes Lily would just disappear. The next morning, that actually comes to fruition, and Lily has completely disappeared. Her family has no idea where she is, and Lily's brother Rowan is really starting to worry about the safety of his sister because he's starting to hear some whispers about a group in the town that are carrying out some really evil deeds. If life is really starting to get you down and you'd like to start doing a little bit more mindfulness or meditation, then check out Mindful by Dermot Whelan. Dermot is a radio presenter and a comedian in Ireland, and while he was at the Kilkenny Cat Laughs, which is a big comedy festival in the June bank holiday, he had a panic attack while he was waiting to go on stage. Dermot decides to look into this a little bit more to figure out what it was that triggered this panic attack and how it is that he can overcome this should it happen again in the future. What evolves from this is a much more mindful understanding of how his mind works and how he can use the techniques that he has uncovered to help not just himself but other people that he knows and loves. He shares some really great advice as to how to get started with meditation, how to practice mindfulness, and how to really take some time to center yourself and bring yourself back into the room if you are suffering from a panic attack as well. Finally, a book that champions New Ireland and modern Ireland is Anseo by Una Min Kavanagh. Una Min was adopted from Vietnam by a single mother who lives in Kerry in the 1990s, and Una Min goes through all of the things that this means for her as a person of colour living in Ireland, as an adoptee living in Ireland, as the child of a single parent, as somebody who grew up in a predominantly Irish-speaking family in a predominantly Irish-speaking area, and all of the things that this has meant for her, from the racist remarks that she has received, from how much her love of the Irish language has inspired her in so many areas of her life, and also the super sweet relationship between Una Min and her grandfather. I absolutely loved reading about the two of them together, and it's such a heartwarming relationship to read from. If you'd like to see what Ireland is like in the contemporary times and how it has really come forward from the kind of white bread country that you might know, this is definitely the one to pick up. There it is, an entire selection of books by Irish authors that I think you really need to give a try to. Which of these books are you going to go and pick up first? Or is there one that you think I've missed out on and I should have put on this list? Let everybody know in the comments below. But if you'd love to leave a comment and you don't know of anything to say, then why not just leave me an Irish flag emoji? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.